Excuse me, apologies. My daughter, Kamala. She's in California visiting some friends there. La La Land, as they say.
Did you know Ant-Man had a daughter?
What do you want?
I'm putting together a team. And I want you on it.
Daredevil Born Again is back with episode 5 and 6, and I was honestly shocked that they dropped 2 episodes at the same time, but I guess they wanted to do a nice mid-season epic episode with revealing both these great episodes at the same time, because we got some cool action, we got Daredevil being awesome, and we got him suiting up once again. Plus, we got some cool Easter eggs and references to other Marvel projects, which we're going to be talking about in this video. And we got to start off with episode 5 being St. Patty's Day, and that's all because the Irish mob is the one that's robbing the bank in this episode. Putting those two things together, while Matt is there going to meet with Kamala's dad, Yusuf Khan, because the bank manager who's normally there is not in today. Little side note, I didn't realize that Devlin was actually working with Luca, and I thought that Devlin might have been the head of the Irish gang, but it makes sense that he's actually with the Tracksuit Mafia because he was in the first episode with the 5 families. And also, he did go on Luca's orders to rob the Red Hook Pier. Now back to Kamala's father. And I do like that he has a Miss Marvel Funko on his desk. And you know what? I don't think they probably have toys out for Miss Marvel, so it's most likely that Kamala made it herself. As the big fangirl she is, it would make a lot of sense. And on top of it, on his desk as well, we do have a picture of him with his family, just teasing up more Miss Marvel and the connection from that series. And on top of it, during this whole episode, Mr. Khan references Miss Marvel a bunch of times and Kamala because he's proud of his daughter. And as well, not many people know who Miss Marvel is because even Matt was kind of questioning who she was. And this is the first MCU crossover we've gotten so far of the series. Because, you know, the Punisher, Bullseye, everyone else was part of the Netflix series. Now we finally have someone from the main MCU, which is pretty cool to see. And Mr. Khan name drops Kamala a bunch during this, which is nice. It just kind of gives us a refresher that she's in the MCU, kind of leading into her. And he also mentions that her and friends went to California, which is setting up the Champions or the Young Avengers, as Kamala is actually going with Kate Bishop to recruit Cassie Lang. Because we know at the end of the Marvels, she goes and recruits Kate Bishop and then says that Ant-Man has a daughter. So all setting up her making the young team of heroes as they are now slowly coming together, and we will slowly get one after another as we progress. I still bet you any money as soon as we get Ironheart, when that series ends, Kamala will recruit her to become part of that team, and we'll probably see Kate Bishop and Cassie Lang with her to kind of show that the team of youngsters are coming together. On top of it, she's most likely also seeing Bruno, because we know after Miss Marvel, Bruno went to Caltech in California. We also have a nice little moment of Mr. Khan touching the candy to show Matt where it is. Because he's blind, he's making the sound, helping him figure out where it is so he could grab it. So there's a little fun scene as they're talking, but ultimately Matt doesn't get his loan that he's trying to get. It gets denied and he leaves. But that is keeping the trend of Marvel characters not being able to get loans, just like how Sam didn't get his loan in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But then he gets robbed, so he comes right back. And I love how Matt just nonchalantly walks right into the room like nothing's wrong, because he knows something's up. He knows it's being robbed, but also he's blind, so he can pretend to be the person who doesn't really knows what's going on to get himself involved and get inside there. And this was a nice little fun scene as Matt kind of like jokes with them, talks to the robbers, and he's very playing off of, you know, being the smartass, which I really like to see. Like how he turns around and says, just because I'm blind, I don't need your pity. And after he's talking back, they're like, okay, you know what? I like you. We'll keep you here. And we also had Detective Kim come back, who we did see in the first episode talking to Cherry. So she makes her return to be that hostage negotiator as she gets 2 hostages let go. And of course, Matt was one of the people that got picked. Not because he's Daredevil or blind, but just because of the fact that he's a lawyer. So it kind of sets up the irony of Matt coming in and then almost immediately getting taken out, but of course he's able to smart ass his way back in and stay there, and help the woman stay with her husband by getting them to let the husband go instead. And I just love how the robbers are trying to intimidate him during this whole scene, and he has no reaction. They try to think, even though he's blind, they try to put the weapon to him to scare him, but he's not scared. This is Daredevil we're talking about, and you know, he's just a really good lawyer. And one of the things I noticed during this scene too is when he's listening to the hostage's heartbeats, he noticed that the woman who ends up being the person on the inside, her heartbeat is steady, it's calm. So he knew already who to pick and who was actually not a hostage and was secretly working with the enemies. So that's when we get Matt tricking them to take him to the bathroom, where he kicks the shit out of the guy with the red mask. And I love in this scene where they make it completely silent, other than hearing them fight each other, because it just kind of adds this tension to it because of how quiet they need to be without the other robbers noticing what's going on. And it's just overall a really good scene as he's listening to Mr. Khan try to distract the other robber who's trying to get him to open the safe. And I just really like how it's like progressing and showing Matt going back to his Daredevil ways, because he knows he has to be the hero because no one else is going to be able to save the day. And I love when he gets to Mr. Khan, he takes out the robber and then he cracks the safe. And we get the line of, "What kind of lawyer are you?" And he's like, "A really good one," which is just like how he did in No Way Home when he caught the brick, telling Peter that he's just a really good lawyer. But this whole robbery was all a planned attack. They had a key already. They were planning to go after a specific safety deposit box that had a diamond within it. And when they're going to the different safety deposit boxes, we get one. The one they end up landing on is number 407, which in the comics, this could be a reference to Daredevil issue number 407, which is titled Underboss. And in this issue, Ben Urich finds out that Kingpin is dead. Now, this could be just a reference to another mob boss trying to usurp Kingpin and take over New York City as he's now Mayor Fisk, because they definitely tease it in this episode with the robbers, the Tracksuit Mafia, Luca going after Kingpin and trying to threaten him and telling him to step down. Like, it's all teasing someone else trying to rise to the top. So with these two episodes, they're leading into that the mobs are kind of doing their own thing right now, and Kingpin now has to take back control. Now, before we get further into this, when Mr. Khan and Matt are talking while Matt is unlocking the safe, we do get a couple line drops here where Mr. Khan asks him about being an orphan, and he mentions the fact that his dad died when he was young, which we saw in season 1 of Daredevil after not throwing the boxing match. And then he also mentions how he met his mother later in life, which we did see in season 3 of Daredevil after he got crushed by that building during Defenders. So just nice little references to the previous seasons, and I just like how they put those little details in to kind of give us more about Daredevil. Plus, Mr. Khan also mentions about how they need to impart what they know to the next generation, which he learned during Miss Marvel as they kind of taught their daughter to do better and make her own choices as she went out to be this hero. Now, as Mr. Khan and Matt go back up to the main lobby of the bank, we do have the cops breaking in, the robbers getting suspicious, Matt throwing them the diamond. We did see the green robber going and giving the diamond to the girl who was actually in the bank and told her to take it to Luca, the Tracksuit Mafia boss. Then he goes in the back to take off his jacket to reveal a cop uniform so he can easily sneak out. Now, this is where Matt ends up following him, putting on the red mask from the other robber and beating the living crap out of this guy. However, you notice during this fight, even though Matt is getting some pretty good hits in, he is stumbling a little bit. He's not able to do it as good as he once did, but that's because he hasn't been Daredevil for a while, so he's out of practice. Now, as we get to the final episode of this season, we're going to have him slowly regain his fighting style and getting better and better because he has to relearn the moves since he hasn't done it in a while. This was just a brutal fight. Matt just bashed the guy's face in with a bottle and then snapped his leg in two. Like, this was a crazy fight for just Matt being Matt and not even being in his Daredevil suit. And I do really like how he's using his walking stick as his billy club. So he's just literally being Daredevil but without the suit, which I thought was just a really awesome moment to give us. And even though we haven't got Daredevil suiting up since episode 1, it was great to still see some action. But that's when we find out that the girl actually had a piece of candy rather than the diamond, where then when Matt goes to see Mr. Khan, he gets invited to dinner. So that could be him meeting Miss Marvel and meeting the Khans and just having a nice family dinner moment, just like how he did in She-Hulk when she went to Jen's family lunch. He also drops off the diamond, which makes me wonder.
Now you may be asking, how did Matt get that diamond? And it's when he went to go throw it to the robber, he actually already swapped it out with the candy because the robber didn't even look inside the bag and just took it as is. So a nice little trick by Matt.
But it was a really good moment, and I kind of wonder, who does that diamond belong to? Does it belong to Kingpin, or does it belong to someone else of more high nobility? But it was a great episode. I really liked how they kind of gave us that action, gave us some stakes, and honestly, even though it was only really in the bank, it was like this really fun episode of showing Matt be Daredevil, slowly get back into the role, and also just having these really cool moments with another MCU character when he just tries to be Matt Murdock, pretending that he's not someone else. Which I think people are going to slowly start to get suspicious with some of the stuff he does, but it is great just to see him be a badass overall. And then when we get into episode 6, it starts off by teasing Muse, just because you have all the different graffiti artists doing graffiti throughout the city and just setting up what's to come. Then we have the next big vigilante MCU reference, which is the Swordsman, who we did see during Hawkeye. He was the guy that Kate Bishop's mother was dating, and we saw him using his sword at the end of the final fight when they were going against the Tracksuit Mafia. So it's cool to see him again, and we see him again later in the episode as he's talking to Kingpin, talking about how he doubts going after vigilantes is a good idea and even threatens Fisk with saying that he can make one phone call, which could be a reference to him actually going after Fisk as the swordsman, because we have him in this moment not masked up and he's not acting as a vigilante, but he's in his more rich persona self. So it's cool that we got this little Easter egg and this little cool cameo that really doesn't go anywhere, but it is fun to have these little characters interconnect with other shows just to show how the MCU is connected, and these people all live in New York City. But then we end up seeing, after the BB report, we do see Muse's victim from last episode with his eyes cut out, which this is a reference to Blind Spot getting his eyes poked out by Muse during the Daredevil run when they first took on Muse. Then we catch up with Matt, who's praying because he's gone back to violent. After seeing Frank, he's kind of realizing who needs to be, trying to figure out what he should do, and he's remembering all the things that's happened to him over these past episodes. We have him remembering Bullseye and Foggy's death. We have the cops coming after him kicking the shit out of them. We have Hector's death, and then we have the bank robbers from the previous episode, so it's showing his tendency to go towards violence coming back, and he's praying about it. He's trying to like overcome his need for violence and trying to figure out who he is, and it's slowly just building him back to becoming Daredevil by the end of the episode and needing to be that hero again. And accepting that violent part of him. Which then when Heather comes in and starts talking about her new book that she's trying to create, which has to do with vigilantes, asking if the mask allows us to be our true selves or if it allows us to act like animals. Setting up Matt having to come to the realization of who he is and that Daredevil is actually a part of him. The mask shows his true selves, but it also allows him to kind of act like an animal as he likes to fight. He likes the violence. And it's kind of a fun moment too where we have her asking if she can get an interview with Frank Castle, setting up her wanting to meet the Punisher because Matt did represent him during season 2 and knows him. Even mentioning Daredevil because after the events of season 1 of Daredevil, the public knows that Murdoch and Nelson had worked with Daredevil to take down Fisk. Just fun little moments as they're tying into who Matt knows as vigilantes. And he knows a ton more. He knows Jessica Jones, he knows Luke Cage, he knows Iron Fist. Not sure who actually knows he knows these characters. However, we also have She-Hulk because he went to LA to represent his client and then ended up meeting up with She-Hulk. But he knows a few vigilantes and he could easily help Heather get some for her book. But then as we go forward, we have the tracksuit mafia leader, Luca, going to see Mayor Fisk. And he just came to talk to him about the 1.8 that he owes to Victor. However, he refuses to pay it. And I love as they're kind of going over this, Fisk says, you know what? Make it 2.8. Pay Victor the 1.8 and then the rest goes to me. Showing that he's still in charge. Even though Luca tries to threaten him, he puts the pin on Luca, showing his dominance, making sure that no one can stand above the Kingpin. He might not be that big mob boss anymore, but he still runs the city, and he's not going to take any shit from any of the other mob bosses. So I do like how they set up that there's an internal conflict of these bosses trying to fight for power. However, that's not going to work out well for them as the Kingpin is coming back. And even though he's Mayor Fisk, he's still going to be the Kingpin no matter what, and he's going to fight these guys tooth and nail. Showing us after we saw him beat the crap out of Adam at the end of the episode, showing that full of violence is not gone. That rage is not gone. He's still there and he's still ready to fight. And then directly after that, we have Johnny, who works with sanitation, finding out that the murals are all over the New York City that were painted by Muse actually have blood on them. Which when the cops come in, that there's most likely 60 victims, possibly more, which is a setup for Muse using human blood for his murals, which he does in the comics. Because the first one they found in the comics did have 100 victims' blood in it. So they're all showing that Muse is still kind of following his comic origin. We're using other people and their blood to make these murals. Very disturbing, and Muse is a disturbing villain, so I can't wait to see how much more they go into it by the end of the season. And I like the idea that Fisk doesn't want to sound any alarms telling people about the murals being covered in blood and that there's a serial killer, because Heath knows that if they out the killer's just going to go to hiding and then come back stronger. So he's using that kind of criminal brain that he has to prevent them from doing something that would scare the serial killer away. Then with Muse as well, we do have Angela going to Matt to try to talk to him about how Hector was looking into something, that people are going missing in the city, teasing that Muse is the serial killer without Matt knowing it's Muse the serial killer. Like, they're all just giving us these little hints to tease what's coming, even though we know, because as an audience, we know, but the characters don't. And I like that setup as we watch these characters try to figure out what's really going on. And I love that Angela's talking about how someone needs to finish White Tiger's work. The people who went missing were all near track 61 in Q1, which is clearly White Tiger looking into Muse. And I do like how Hector taught her not to rely on anyone, that she can do herself, which is setting up her becoming a vigilante 100%. She's going to have to become that hero because she can't rely on anyone else. Even though at the end of the episode, we did have Daredevil coming to save her, which she'll come to the realization maybe that's something she wants to do to be this hero. And I've seen a lot of people talk about how she might become a young Avenger or a champion because she's a young person who is technically the second White Tiger. Now, the only thing I'm kind of worried about that is the fact that she is pretty young. Then if she is going to become that second White Tiger, does that mean we're just never going to get Ava Ayala? And like, how would the story even go? Like, are they going to change up, mash these two characters together? It makes me question what they're going to do with White Tiger after all of this. But let me know if you have any of your own theories in the comments down below, and if you think they'll just kind of move past her, go to Ava, or if she'll become like a young Avenger or a champion. We also had this moment with Muse making his mural and two girls coming up to him and asking him for a picture because she's Muse. Now, these two girls end up being his next victim, but in the comics, he actually does take the picture with the two girls. He's painting a Punisher picture, and he takes the picture and doesn't kill them, and he just lets them go. So it's just kind of showing in this moment who he is. I believe the murals he made later in the comics, which he was doing the Punisher, Daredevil, and all the other vigilantes, he wasn't using human blood. That was only for the first story he was in. So it is kind of interesting to see how they're kind of putting those two stories together and changing it up for him in the show.
To be fair, though, the only reason he didn't kill those two girls in the comics is because the cops interrupted him and he ended up using those for his art. But there were additional pieces to the Punisher art.
Then we have Fisk going to a fundraiser to get money from the New York elite to help fund his endeavors in New York to make the city a better place. Now, one key important note from this section is that when he goes to put on a suit, it rips, showing that Kingpin is getting bigger once again. So he's going to be that more larger sized Kingpin that people are so scared of because of how strong he is. They're just all setting up him becoming that strong Mayor Fisk and, where he's going to go as he is a force to be reckoned with. We also have Cherry warning Matt about the serial killer, and he tells him that the suspect is Muse, telling Matt not to go into it and let the cops deal with it. However, by doing this, he just set up Matt going after him. Like, this is giving the vigilante being like, hey, don't do this, but here's the information for you to go be a vigilante once again. So they just all in this whole episode set up Matt becoming Daredevil once again, setting up him putting on the cowl and becoming this vigilante because the city needs him, which is exactly what he does when Angela gets involved. But we'll get to that in a moment because there's another part I want to talk about with Mayor Fisk making his new anti-vigilante task force with the cops he handpicked. And all those cops all have one thing in common is that they're dirty cops. They're bad apples. And most of them are most likely in that Punisher fanboy club. And the thing is, with him doing this, he's making it so this task force has special privileges. They can get away with things. They don't have body cams. They have overtime, and it's just showing it that Mayor Fisk wants to oversee this task force so that he can go after all these vigilantes and criminals in the city. He even points out one detective, Cole North, who is from Chicago.
Now, Cole North first appeared in the comics in issue number 1 from 2019, which was the start of Chip Zdarsky's run in Daredevil. I probably pronounced Chip's name wrong, but hey, you know who he is because he's fantastic.
Now, in the comics, Cole North is from Chicago. He's another enemy of Daredevil because he came into New York City and he was highly against vigilantes, especially Daredevil. All the other cops were kind of okay with vigilantes, like they didn't mind helping Daredevil, letting him kind of do his thing, but Cole North was different. He went after Daredevil. He even took on Daredevil himself in a fist fight in the street, ultimately taking down Daredevil and capturing him, which then led into the Punisher breaking Daredevil. Eventually, Cole North would be sent to go after Spider-Man, and then later down the road, he would end up working with Matt and to go against Mayor Fisk. So it kind of makes me wonder if eventually he will go to the good side, where at first, he might have been a bad cop, but he's trying to be better. He's against vigilantes, but then he realizes that Fisk is actually the real villain. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do with the new anti-vigilante task force, who most likely will all don Punisher logos at some point as well, because they have the Punisher fanboys there. But now, let's talk about Daredevil coming back, because Angela goes into the tunnels by herself. She has to finish what her uncle started, and then she gets captured. But I do love how her mom calls Matt, and while Matt is figuring out what to do, he calls 911, but then ends up just saying, fuck it, and goes and does it himself. Because he knows that cops aren't going to be able to handle this, they're not going to get there in time, and if he doesn't act now, Angela is not going to make it. So I do love the fact that he puts the Daredevil suit back on, and he heads straight there. Muse starts to inject her and starts to drain her blood, and then Matt just comes in and decks him. Now, the one thing I was thinking in this moment is, you know what would come in really handy? The White Tiger amulet. So it makes me wonder if the cops still have it, or if it's made its way back to the Ayala family. However, with this beatdown that Matt's giving him, it was just a great moment to watch Matt let out that inner rage, that inner violence, and just beating the crap out of Muse, showing him not letting this girl die no matter what he does, and even taking hits and just being unfazed. Like, he gets punched multiple times, just let the blood splatter on the ground, and he just keeps on fighting and fighting, even strangling Muse at one point. I saw someone put on Twitter that he almost killed Muse. I'm like, he wouldn't have killed Muse. He would have just strangled him so he got knocked out from not being able to breathe, and then he would have taken him in. Especially because, Daredevil still has a no-killing rule, and I highly doubt he would have killed him in that moment. Because of what was going on, he had to stop that fight to save Angela's life because her heart stopped beating, and he couldn't let what happened to Foggy happen to her. So I really like the fact that he stepped in, saved her, and stopped it. And you could even see during this fight that Muse, he was looking to kill Angela. She was his next piece of art. And I love that Matt was able to stop him from doing that, of course, because he's Daredevil and he's not going to let an innocent girl die. And I love that he was able to save Angela. Just this really good moment of also her realizing Daredevil is back. Just fantastic overall. However, they never showed that Muse had powers. In the comics, he has his powers that can absorb the sensory information around him, making it hard for Daredevil to fight him. It could still happen, we could still see that, but at least in this episode, they have not revealed it yet. Plus, in this moment, when they do enter that room, we do see bodies hanging from the ceiling, and I did mention it last episode where this is a reference to the comics, where when Daredevil finds Muse's lair, they do have bodies hung up everywhere, showing that he's a serial killer. So just nice little nod to his comic storyline. Now in this moment as well, we do also have this scene being intercut with Fisk going down to his underground lair as he goes to give Adam an axe to fight him. And, just absolutely beating the crap out of Adam. But the reason he gave Adam that axe was because of the fact that he wanted to have this fight that he seemed fair. Fisk is a bigger guy, so he thinks that giving Adam an axe will give him the edge, and he just wanted a reason to beat the crap out of Adam. By doing this, he knew that Adam would be doing bigger swings, trying to hit him with that axe, leaving openings for Fisk to beat the crap out of Adam, giving us this really cool moment of Fisk knowing how to fight, showing his inner rage come out, and showing that his darkness is back as well, and he's ready to take the fight as the Kingpin and not let anyone talk down to him. Especially after what happened with Luca, he just needed to let it out and beat the crap out of someone. And it was just like this really good moment of showing both Daredevil and Kingpin let their inner rage out. We see them both scream, and honestly quite satisfying part of the episode as they're both now letting out their both darker sides as they go back to the people they used to be. Both the Kingpin and the Vigilante. Both these characters changed for a bit. Fisk went to become mayor. He pushed away from being Kingpin. Matt stopped being Daredevil, but now they're back to their old selves and they're back with their rage and they're ready for a beatdown. Like, it's setting up this really cool moment of both of them kind of separating from where they were, coming back together now, being mirrored images of each other and ready to take on that fight to New York City. One's going to do it by being the mayor, but also running the mobs on the side without people noticing, and the other one is a vigilante going out to save people and beat the crap out of criminals. So just cool to see where they're coming. These two episodes were fantastic. I love what they set up, and I can't wait for more. Also, having those cool MCU Easter eggs and references were also fantastic, and also just having those comic connection ties were great as well. Just kind of setting up the story and giving us these things to look forward to, and having these scenes be performed amazingly. Like, I love what they're doing. Both Charlie and Vincent are just doing a fantastic job playing their characters, and I can't wait to see how they continue down the road with this season and season 2 and so on. But let me know, what did you think of episode 5 and 6 of Daredevil Born Again? What are you looking forward to? And were there any other Easter eggs and references you noticed during it? I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot, and you get to stay up to date with all my Daredevil breakdowns, DC, and even my anime one. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll talk to you next week when it's time for another Daredevil Born Again episode.